We live in a culture obsessed with success and well-being. We turn on the TV or open social media, and the message is always the same. If you do everything right, you will be happy, healthy, and prosperous all the time. And unfortunately, we have brought this mindset into our spiritual lives. Many of us believe deep down that if we are faithful Christians, if we read the Bible and pray every day, we will live in a constant state of spiritual joy. We expect to feel goosebumps, hear God's voice clearly, and have our hearts warm 24 hours a day. But then, reality knocks at the door. Suddenly, without warning, the lights go out. The prayer that was once easy becomes a burden. Bible reading feels like a cold academic text. You go to church, sing the songs, but feel like you are just moving your lips. The heavens seem like bronze. At this moment, the modern Christian panics. Our culture has taught us that a lack of feeling is a sign of failure. We think, God has left me, or I am in hidden sin, or even, was my faith ever real? But today I want to invite you to look at this darkness differently. What if this silence is not a punishment, but a gift? What if God is taking away his toys to give you a real inheritance? To understand this, we need to travel to 16th century Spain and meet a man who found the brightest light inside the darkest prison. John of the Cross. Juan de Yepes, whom we would later know as John of the Cross, was not born into privilege. He grew up in extreme poverty in Spain, watched his family suffer, and learned early on that life was not easy. But he had an unquenchable hunger for God. As a young man, he joined the Carmelite order. But he realized something that deeply troubled him. The religious life of that time had become too comfortable. There was too much politics, status seeking, and very little real sacrifice. John wanted to go back to the roots, to a simple faith focused only on Christ and the scriptures, without the excesses and luxuries that had contaminated the church. Along with Teresa of Avila, he started a reform movement. They wanted the friars to live simply, barefoot, or with simple sandals, dedicated to prayer. It sounds noble, right? But history teaches us that whoever tries to change the status quo usually pays a high price. The religious leaders of the time did not like this at all. They viewed John as a rebel, a fanatic who was disrupting the order of things. And here the story takes a dramatic turn. On the night of December 2nd, 1577, John was kidnapped, not by bandits but by his own brothers in faith. He was taken blindfolded to the city of Toledo and thrown into an improvised prison inside a monastery. Do not imagine a common cell. It was a narrow closet, little more than 5 feet wide. There were no windows, just a small slit high up on the wall where a sliver of light entered. In the summer, the heat was suffocating. In the winter, the cold was freezing. He received only bread and water and was frequently taken to the refectory to be whipped and publicly humiliated. He spent 9 months there. 9 months without bathing, without changing clothes, covered in wounds and lice. Now think with me. John was trying to serve God with more faithfulness. He was seeking holiness, and his reward was prison and suffering. If it were any of us, the first reaction would be, God, why did you allow this? I was doing your work. It was in this terrible place, where any human being would have gone mad, that the miracle happened. John realized that his captors could imprison his body, but they could not imprison his spirit. Without sunlight, without comfort, without anyone's approval, John was forced to look inward. He discovered that God was not in the external circumstances. God was not in the comfort. God was in the silence. There, in the semi-darkness, he began to compose poems in his mind, since he had no paper. Poems that spoke of an intense and deep love for God. He did not write about pain or injustice. He wrote about the beloved soul finding its beloved Christ. After 9 months, John planned a daring escape. On a dark night, literally, he managed to unscrew the hinges of his cell door while the guards slept. He made a rope out of strips of bedsheets and descended the walls of the city of Toledo. They say he fell near some rocks and, without being seen, escaped to freedom. He took with him only 2 things, the scars on his back and the poems in his memory. These poems became the foundation of his book, The Dark Night of the Soul. But what did he learn after all? To explain what God does with us in difficult times, John uses a brilliant analogy that we can all understand. The log of wood and the fire. Imagine a log of wood that is damp and full of dirt being thrown into an intense bonfire. What happens first? The wood does not catch fire immediately. First, the fire begins to dry the wood, The log begins to cry, releasing water and smoke, becoming black and ugly. The fire exposes all the dirt that was hidden in the wood. If the wood had feelings, it would say, "This fire is destroying me. I am becoming black, ugly, and dry. This is horrible." But the fire is not destroying the wood. It is preparing it. Only after all the moisture leaves and the wood turns black does it finally catch fire. At that moment, the wood and the fire become one. The wood begins to shine and provide heat, having the same nature as the fire. John teaches us that the dark night is this initial fire. We are the damp wood. We are full of attachments. Attachment to our comfort, to our ego, to our reputation, and, pay attention, attachment to our religious feelings. We often seek God for what He gives us, peace, joy, blessings, and not for who He is. We are like children who love their father only when he brings candy. So God, in His infinite mercy, takes away the candy. He takes away the pleasant sensation of prayer. He allows us to pass through valleys of dryness. Why? So that our faith ceases to be based on emotions, which are fleeting, and starts to be based on truth, which is eternal. The mature Christian does not say, "I believe because I feel God." He says, "I believe because God promised even if I feel nothing right now." This is walking by faith and not by sight, as the Apostle Paul taught us. It is very important to pause here for a practical clarification. John of the Cross was very wise and an observer of human psychology. He knew that not all sadness is spiritual. There is clinical depression, which is a medical, chemical, or emotional condition where a person loses the will to live, feels a general apathy toward everything, and needs professional help. The dark night is different. In the dark night, you still have the desire to love God. You want to pray, you want to please God, but you feel like you cannot. You feel a deep pain, not because you lost your job or money, but because you miss the presence of God. It is a pain of love. It is the weaning process. Remember the mother and the baby? The mother takes the breast away not because she stopped loving, but because she wants the child to eat solid food and grow. God takes away the sensible consolation to give us the solid food of pure faith. He wants us to trust in His raw, naked word without needing emotional crutches. So, how should we react when this night arrives in our lives? The natural tendency is to try to fix the problem. We try to pray louder, we seek new songs, we change churches, we look for a new emotional experience. But John of the Cross gives us counterintuitive advice. Be quiet. Trust. Do not try to manufacture artificial fire. Let the process happen. Continue obeying God, continue being faithful in your work, in your family, in your ethics, even without feeling like it. Obedience without desire is perhaps the greatest proof of love you can give to God. It is easy to pray when you feel goosebumps. Praying in the silence is for the brave. The dark night is not the end of the road. It is a tunnel. And like every tunnel, it has an exit. On the other side, there is an unshakable faith, a deep humility, and a capacity to love people without judging them because you know your own weakness. If you are in darkness today, know this. You are not lost. You are being worked on. You are being prepared to shine with a light that is not yours, but His. The night may be long, but the dawn is certain.